Well, it's my real pleasure this evening to introduce my aunt to you, Patty Kempton. If you know Patty, you already know this about her, and that is that Patty is a person who knows how to get things done. When she was younger, she trained as a nurse and worked for many years as a practical nurse. She was the department coordinator of radiology and cardiology at Miles for a while. She has been a property manager to over 30 fine summer cottages, coordinating everything from cleaning to managing all the subcontractors. Anything that her client needed done, she could do. She's been a licensed realtor here in Damariscotta, but I think I can speak for her in saying that her favorite job was managing my uncle's career for the last 20 years of his life. She will tell the story of how my uncle recovered his hearing, and that began a new era of a new segment of his career, and Patty was the manager of that. And that's not an easy job to do. So she managed my uncle in more ways than one, his career and as his wife. So Patty makes friends everywhere she goes, and it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Patty Kempton.
Thanks, dear. Thank you all for coming. There's nothing better I like than talking about my husband. But before we start, I'd like Belinda to play a song that he wrote about himself, the Pemaquid Cowboy.
They call me the Pemaquid Cowboy. I've ridden the range of life. I've sung all the songs of the old cowboys. They're part of my everyday life. I've listened to radio cowboys and rode with them through the years. There was Rex and Roy and the best of them all were the sons of pioneers. Well, I made lots of records and proved my worth, been inducted to halls of fame. I'll keep singing and yodeling and playing my guitar and hope to live up to my name. Lay-o, 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 lay-o-dee, lay-o, lay-o-dee, lay-o-dee, lay-o, lay-o, lay-o-dee, lay-o, why, you're in my way to every song, for the old West I surely belong. So I got me a horse called Sonny. He was long-legged and handsome and strong. Yes, they call me the Pemaquid Cowboy. I've ridden the range of life. I've sung all the songs of the old cowboys. They're part of my everyday life. Lay-o, 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 lay-o-dee, 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 lay-o, lay-o, lay-o-dee, lay-o-dee.
He wrote that song when he was around 70 years old when we were living here in Pemaquid. So he was still writing songs back then too. So Belinda's gonna take care of the slideshow, and as she puts stuff on, this is Rusty's on the left, his brother Bob's on the right, and Belinda's mother's in the middle, Shirley. Everybody knew Shirley Osier. And Rusty's parents both played instruments, mandolin and mandola. And Rusty went to the McKinley School. This is him in the center with his arms crossed. And Shirley's up there, top, second from the right. So when Rusty was 12 years old, his dad said, "Rusty, would you like a bicycle or a bull?" And he said, "Well, Dad, I want a pet bull." So he says, "Well, you can't ride him yet, because it's too young," but he was able to ride it eventually, and he would take that bull up to Downeasters. And what's now the parking lot behind Rennie's was a grass field. And he'd tie the bull up there, and he'd go to the movies. And then he'd come out and he'd get his bull and he'd ride home. So he taught the bull to pull a wagon, because they burned several cords of wood every winter over Pemaquid Harbor. So, and there's Rusty and Shirley and their mom in the middle. He also taught him to pull the cart. So the bull was really something else, I guess. So when Rusty was maybe 14, he went to work at Hildebrandt's farm in Nobleborough, milking cows. And that's where he met his little girl singer, Gloria Simmons, who became Nipe. And they entered contests all over Maine, and Rusty's dad would drive them. And they would each get on one end of the stage. Rusty would be here, she'd be here, and they would yodel into the middle. And they won just about every contest they entered. And there's a picture of Shirley in her costume. Look at that. Is she cute? So. Now, if anybody has questions, because I know some of you remember him, and some of you might have questions about something that happened in his youth that I don't mention, just ask me. I'll tell you what I know. So this was Rusty. He was 15 years old when he left home. And he worked with this group, the Pals of the Golden West, out of New Hampshire, Newburyport, rather. Anyway, he got woken up one Saturday morning and said, "Come on, Rusty, you got to pick the dump." And he says, "What are you talking about, pick the dump? I'm a musician." And he says, No, if you work for our band, you have to pick the dump on Saturdays." You know, they did cardboard and metal, and sometimes they'd find a whole ham. And Rusty says, "Not me, I quit." So they dropped him off at the Newbury Bridge, and it was the hurricane of '38 is when they dropped him off. So he wasn't too pleasant an experience trying to get home.
And he left school?
Well, yeah, this is when he left school. Yeah, he had to be expelled from school because he punched his teacher. Rusty was sitting in a chair. You know, this is the arms crossed. You know, this is typical. And the teacher came over to him and said, "Russell, you think you're special because you're the principal's son?" Because his father was the principal of Bristol High School for many years. And so he grabbed Rusty and he jerked him up, and he ripped Rusty's shirt. And Rusty punched him and punched him and punched him. So Rusty's dad was teaching in the next room and come over and says, "Russell, you've done a terrible thing. Home." So he went home. And then his father said, "Russell, I have to expel you from school." He said, "You did a terrible thing, but before you leave, I know you want to go into music. You have to go walk around the entire peninsula and apologize to every member of the school board," which he did from Pemaquid Harbor all the way to Round Pond and around to every member of the board. And then he had to sell his pet bull. And he got a whole $30 for this huge bull. And he went to get on the bus and left, and gets off the bus with his guitar, and this guy comes up to him and says, "Hey kid, what are you doing?" He said, "Oh, I'm going to be in show business." He said, "Oh, I got all the connections." He said, "You got any money?" "Oh, sure, I got $30. "Well, it's going to cost $30. So Rusty gives him the $30. And he waited there for 2 days. Guy never came back. So he went in. Yeah. So he joined a group called the Downeasters. He was with them before the war. It was another cowboy group. And they played all over Maine, New Hampshire, different places. Do you have a picture of the Downeasters?
I do. Tell them how we met the Downeasters.
So he went to a show that was playing in Portland, and he says, yeah, I need a job, I yodel. And they says, well, we don't need a yodeler, go see the Downeasters. So Bud Bailey will hire anybody. So Bud Bailey's in the center. He hired Rusty, and Rusty was with them till the war. And they used to do the ferry out of Portland, and because he was the youngest one, they'd make him pass the hat for the tips. Now he's getting a little more mature here, see, so he's got the little mustache going and a little more confidence there. They put out a booklet every year, you know, a song book and picture book, and that was 42, so that was a year before the war took him. And that's his picture inside the book. He was the New England yodeling champion when he was 19, yeah.
Did he not go in the military?
Oh, yes, he went in the military. He's
Okay.
very decorated, yeah. So anyway,
How did he choose the name Rusty Rogers?
okay, when he was 16, he won a contest, and the prize for the contest was to go on the radio live. So when he went to the studio, the DJ said, what's your name, kid? Because he says, my name's Russell Haynes Kempton. And the DJ said, well, that's not going to fly. He says, your name is Rusty. You're Rusty Rogers. Rusty says, okay. So that's the name he kept since he was 16 years old, 1939. He had that name before Roy Rogers, actually. So thank you for asking that. They used to sell sheets of music. That's how they all earned money, selling music. And Rusty wrote songs too, and he sold sheet music of his own. That's 1943, so he's about to go into the military. So they had a big party for him. It was in Brunswick. And you know, in those days, everybody came. They brought cakes and cookies and breads, and they had a big, big party. And he sold his guitar off the stage and waved goodbye to all the girls. Yeah. According to his writings, there were a few of them there saying goodbye to him all at the same time. So he was with the combat engineers in the European North African campaign, and he was in 13 countries. He was in the Battle of the Bulge. He was in Normandy. And I don't know what his other 2 battle stars were for, but it took me 3 years to get a copy of his medals because the place where they were kept in Missouri burned. And so then everything was moved. They had to re-find everything. So it took me 3 years to get his medals, and they mailed 4 battle stars. So I know what 2 of them are for. And he said the Battle of the Bulge, he was maybe 20, 21 years old, was the coldest he had ever been in his life. They were in a foxhole digging. It was the coldest it had been in Belgium in years. So he left the foxhole to go have breakfast. This is they were in Marseille here. So Cherbourg was all bombed out. So he went in to this studio in Cherbourg and he asked, would you consider taking a picture for my mom? So that's the picture he sent back to Daisy, his mother. And of course, while he's there, he's posing, yeah. Those are his medals. I could only get the U.S. medals. I couldn't get all the medals from all the countries. You know, everything was burned in the Pemaquid Harbor fire. His family home was burnt. And all his memorabilia went with it that he didn't have personally with him. So that's all I was able to get for him. So I had it framed. So now he went back with the Downeasters, and they're working out of St. Joe, Missouri on a coast-to-coast TV radio show, and he's yodeling up a storm on the radio. And this famous cowboy quintet out of Hartford, Connecticut, which was second in the country they were the East Coast version of the Sons of the Pioneers, heard his yodel, and they contacted him. So this was the Down homers before Rusty joined him. That's Bill Haley over there, second from the right. Bill Haley of rock and roll fame. So they sent Rusty a telegram, and they wanted his yodel. They wanted him, So he went and he joined the Down Homers, and he replaced Bill Haley. So there's the original $75 a week they offered him in 1946. Can you believe it? That was a lot of money back then. Yeah. Well, Rusty was one of these people that kept everything, you know, because a lot of entertainers say, oh, I did this and I did that, but they have no proof. But he wanted to, so he kept it. Yeah, he was on WKFEQ St. Joe, Missouri radio station when they heard him. So, pretty good gig. So he was a lead singer and yodeler with them for 7 years. While he was with them, he was always competing in a health spa someplace. He didn't do the drugs, he didn't do alcohol, he didn't play cards, so he was always competing. So when he was in his 20s, he was the middleweight lifting champion in Connecticut. This is just a copy of one of their shows.
I like the
This was-
introduction.
Yeah. Hi there, neighbors. Come on from the studios WTIC, Hartford, Connecticut. NBC presents the Western band, the Down Homers. It's a weekend wind-up of songs of the West coming to you way down east. So come on in and enjoy. Yeah. There he is. They had many, many publications, and oftentimes they put him in the center because he was the lead singer and yodeler. So that's one of the songs he wrote, and he would sell the songs. Yodels of love. The ladies loved it.
So handsome. Yeah.
So they were written up in so many magazines and so many publications, and this was one of them. They would get full-page stories in all these publications. They were so popular, they sold, I'm trying to think, was it 50,000 pictures in a month, and they ended up buying 2 gold packets to go to their gigs in. They'd be on the radio all day, and they'd have gigs at night. They also had all these songs in the top 30 with Rusty Rogers as a lead singer and yodeler. So you can see his name, Rusty Rogers, yeah, because he was which was unheard of to have that many songs in the top 30, but they listed it under folk, not country, not western, under folk, yeah. Radio Mirror was another publication. It was the most popular showbiz magazine in the 50s. They gave him a full page. After being featured in Radio Mirror and doing coast-to-coast network, they thought it was never going to end. We all had beautiful homes built and plenty of money. There's no business like show business, and that was written by him, Rusty Rogers. So that's the spread they put in that magazine. They used to book Rusty as coming as a cowboy out of St. Joe, Missouri, because they thought it sounded better if he was, from out there instead of from Maine. So lots of the publications say he was from St. Joe, Missouri. He was a singing person. He rode. He was a fantastic horse rider, and he lassoed. He did all kinds. He made his own bows and arrows. He was sort of like half cowboy, half mountain man. Seriously, in real life, that was what he was like. There wasn't anything he wouldn't attempt to carve or make, and then he hand-forged knives for years. But I mean, he taught the kids how to make bows and arrows, and taught my son how to lasso, and yeah. He didn't compete in cowboy stuff. He was competing in yodeling, music, and in weightlifting. Those were his feats, so. But
I have another song if you'd like.
You have another song?
Yeah.
Go ahead, sure.
Okay.
Belinda has another song for you.
Down there from Micro
Connecticut, NBC is presenting songs of the Old Southwest, featuring Patty Kempton, Shorty Cook, Slim Cox, Rusty Rogers, and Hank Compton.
This is 1950.
With a 15-minute spark in your Saturday afternoon listening schedule. The Down Homers. Yes, Way Down Home, a familiar theme, a favorite melody in New England, for it introduces some of New England's favorites, the Down Homers. And here's your host for the next quarter hour. I think he's from the Panhandle. Sometimes he looks like one. Guy Campbell.
Well, thank you, Floyd Richardson. Howdy, friends and neighbors everywhere. Hello, gang! Everybody's feeling real good today, Floyd. You all right?
Feeling very well, Guy. You looking well.
Oh, I feel very good, thank you.
You know about this first song, Guy, I think the folks should know that you and Shorty wrote it, Out Where the West Winds Blow.
Thank you. Let's sing it for us.
That's what they paid the big bucks for, that yodel. Yeah.
Patty,
Yes.
do you know if they ever played or toured with anyone like, Bob Wills and Texas Playboys or Hank Penny?
No.
Okay, they're kind of that same.
No, I mean, they did the Midwestern Hayride, and Rusty actually, just before World War II, 1942, he was played with the Sons of the Pioneers, actually, in at the Boston Garden. They were performing, and I have a picture. It's probably going to be up there, but it's a picture of the original Sons of Pioneers, and on the back of it they wrote, "To Rusty Rogers, the world's fastest yodel," and that was quite a thing to have written by the the Sons of Pioneers. So we kept in touch with them through the years. We used to go see them. Yeah. So this was from the Down Homers yearbook.
He was born in St. Joseph, Missouri.
Well, that's what they said. It was. They thought it was good advertising to say that he was from St. Joe instead of Pemaquid Harbor, Yeah. So he was a champion weightlifter, and one of the barbells he lifted was called the Rolandau dumbbell. There's only a few people in the world that lifted it. And see, it wasn't, you couldn't lift it with one arm. That's a 200-pounder. This was a 209-pounder, but it had a bar this big. So you couldn't get your hand around it, so you had to lift it like this, and then you had to go like this with 209 pounds, one hand, and have it up over your head till they did the count. It took him 3 years, and he did that and was written up for that also in Strength and Health magazine. Those are some of his weights. But there was only a few people in the whole world that lifted that Rolando dumbbell. They asked him if he wanted to buy it, and he says, heck no, I had my own made. So this is when they were picked to go on the Arthur Godfrey show. And that was quite a coup, but Arthur Godfrey didn't like Western wear. He didn't like Western music. So the down-homers had to go out and buy these ugly suits to go on to the Arthur Godfrey show, and he said they were absolutely horrible. Red plaid and gold pants, and they weren't allowed to do. Yeah, they wore them once and threw them out. And they weren't allowed to do a Western song, so they sang "Listen to the Mockingbird," and at the very end, Rusty put a little yodel in there, and they won. But by winning the Arthur Godfrey show, they got their own NBC TV show. Yeah. Alan Ludden was also one of his producers. He was married to Betty White. Yeah. So that's one of the pages of the TV guide. Proof's in the pudding, you know, so there you go. Except the St. Joe, Missouri. We don't, that's a lie. So there he is competing. He used to bring his, some of his shows, he would bring his weights because he could do this weightlifting, and it was part of the act. You know, everybody in the down-homers did something besides just sing, and his was weightlifting. So he'd bring the weights on stage, and then he'd invite people to come up and try to lift them. Yeah, he did. He was the strongman for the Bozo show in Boston many years ago, yeah. He was the real strongman. Because he was into all this weightlifting stuff, he became co-owners of some of the health studios. So he had one in Ohio, one in Connecticut, one in Massachusetts that he was part of. So because of the Rolando dumbbell, they gave him a whole page in the Strength and Health magazine. Now this was the most popular weightlifting magazine, Strength and Health magazine in the country. And they gave him a whole page there about his lifts, so. I don't have one scrapbook on Rusty, I have 6. They take up this much space. So while he owned the health spas, he thought he'd go to school to learn Swedish massage. So he did that too. So he could, you know, work on the athletes.
So why did he leave the down-homers?
So the down-homers got a gig in Europe. And Rusty said, I'm not going back. You know, he was in 13 countries during the war. He didn't want to go back. So he left the down-homers on his own in 1954 and started his own career wrestling and singing music. So, and he kept in touch with the down-homers. We visited them. So he did pro wrestling. He did 230 professional matches. He weighed 220 pounds at the most. He had a 48-inch chest, a 16-inch arm, and a 34-inch waist. He was like, yeah. He didn't want to mess with Rusty when he was in his wrestling stage. Yeah.
Did he have a different name for?
No, he wrestled under Rusty Rogers. We had a gig up with this girl singer in Woodstock, I think it was, New Brunswick, Canada, and this guy came over to him and said, are you the same Rusty Rogers that used to wrestle here? And he says, yup. So they remember the name. These are just fan letters, you know. Don't sing too much hillbilly music and play a lot of Latin American music. Well, let me tell you about his Spanish guitar. So he used to play Spanish music. So when he was 16, he thumbed to Mexico to learn Spanish guitar. So he gets there, and there's guy's playing and playing. So Rusty asked him, you know, will you show me? And the guy says, oh, no, no. So Rusty kept buying him drinks. So after a while, the guy's fingers were slower and slower, and Rusty could see what he was doing with his fingers on the guitar. So Rusty learned Spanish guitar, and so that night he was out of money. He had enough to go to an all-night movie, so he's in the movie house, and he's practicing on his leg, you know, brum, 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 and the usher comes down and says, Senor, no, no, no. So, and then he thumbed home, you know, from there. I mean, I don't know where he got the guts to thumb all the way to Mexico at 16 in the back of a truck. But in those days, you could go across the border, no problem. And he taught all his buddies how to play Spanish guitar. So while he was in New York City on NBC TV, he also studied jazz in New York. So a lot of his music has jazz chords. So a lot of the local musicians couldn't back him up because they couldn't figure out what he was playing. You know, so he had one gig, and he showed up, and he was trying to tell them what he's going to play, and they said, "Don't worry, old timer, we can take care of it. We'll follow you." So he gets on stage and he opens his guitar case. Now his guitar case was like this big, and it had a D'Angelico in it. Well, a D'Angelico is the Stradivarius of guitars. When he opened that case on stage, the band leader said, pardon my English, "Oh shit, we're in trouble." Because you didn't own a D'Angelico unless you really knew how to play. And in 1950, he had that D'Angelico made in New York. D'Angelico used to make maybe 6 or 7 a year because he didn't do them in the humidity in the summer. So he said to Rusty, "You little star, you only have to pay little money." So he only paid $450 in 1950 for the D'Angelico. And then when it was appraised, you know, his health was failing. He no longer could play, and the insurance company didn't want him playing it, even though it was insured. So, and there was only one company in the state of Maine, all Lloyd's of London, that would insure the guitar. So, and at that time, it was valued at $30,000, which, you know, really, isn't that much according to prices today, but anyway, he ended up selling it. So he gets a phone call from the dealer, and he says, "Rusty, you didn't tell me you changed the original color of the guitar." And he says, "Well, what difference does that make?" He says, "I got the car in 1950. It was too light. I didn't like it, so I sent it back, and I had a different color done." He says, "Well, it's a $10,000 difference. So now your guitar's only worth $20,000." So, you know, he made the decision, as his health was failing, to sell his guitars, and you know, and he never sold any of his recording stuff. He said, "When I'm gone, you can take care of it." But he did want the guitars to be in the hands of somebody who would appreciate them, so he chose to sell them. This is when he had his own TV show. He did a live TV show out of Providence, Rhode Island, one a week there, one out of Portland, and one out of Burlington, Vermont. So, the Rusty Rogers Trio.
Wasn't there a story about someone seeing him wrestling and then going and seeing him singing?
Yeah, he was in the wrestling rink. The reason he moved to Massachusetts, that's where I met him, was his agent booked him for 52 matches in a row in Massachusetts. He says, "Well, if I have to be there every week, I might as well buy a house." So that's what he did. So that's why we happen to be in the same state. So I'll get to how I met him later. So anyway, so this girl was at the wrestling arena in North Attleboro, Massachusetts, Jack Witchy's. And then afterwards, she went to this dinner club, and there's Rusty strolling around in a tuxedo playing the guitar. And she looked at him and she says, "Didn't I just see you up there?" And he says, "Yup." Yeah, he was quite the Renaissance man, actually. That's what he looked like when he did his strolling guitar act. And those are all just different places he played. And Fontaine Dickens was the very popular place in Foxborough, Mass, on Route 1, and he played there for 3 or 4 years. And Lake Compounds was quite the compound in Connecticut. The Downhomers played there every Sunday for years. just some of his cards. He taught guitar at Mount Ida College. Yeah, he was quite the instructor, yeah. He actually taught Joe Perry of Aerosmith. Joe Perry was just a kid and he came into the music studio and he wanted to learn some chords. Well, Rusty was a chord man and so he taught him some chords, but when Joe Perry is interviewed in his later years, he tells everyone he's self-taught. But he did have some lessons with Rusty Rogers. So he owned a very successful landscaping corporation. He was incorporated eventually.
Why did he go back to Kempton?
Well, that was his legal name. That was because this was all legal stuff. When you're incorporated, you don't use show business names. You use your legal name, yeah. So then he got his hearing back. He lost 80% of his hearing, and that's how I met him. It was 1976, and I was coordinating an ear, nose, and throat clinic. We lived in a one-horse town, Rentham, Mass. You know, no sidewalks in our street. Everybody had horses, dogs, kids. So my daughter's surgeon from Boston was willing to do a clinic for me. And it was for the elderly. I coordinated elderly affairs at that time. So I get a phone call from this guy, and he said, I want to meet this famous doctor. And I says, well, are you a senior citizen? He says, no. And I says, well, this clinic's for the elderly. He says, I don't care. I need to meet this doctor. So I says, okay. So I called the doctor and I says, you know, this guy wants to meet you. And he says, what's his name? Russell Kempton. Okay. So he says, you come in with him and I'll pretend I know him. So I walk into this church hall with this guy I don't even know. And you handsome devil, you. And the doctor comes over and says, hey, Russ, how you doing? You know, mixed belief. How you doing, Russ? And he says, I can make, he says, come on, let me see how the old ears are doing, as if he knew him as a patient. He put the tuning fork up and he says, I can give you your hearing back. So he had a stapedectomy in 76. He had the second one in 77, and we got married in 78. Yes! So then he decided to go on the road again. Stopped playing music, so. And then he had his own TV show, Rusty Rogers' Tribute to the American Cowboy. So he rode the same quarter horse for 30 years. That was, my kid sister still has that saddle in her bar room. Or not bar room, in the bar in her entertaining room at the bar. So he loved that horse, oh my Lord. So this is a horse we rented in Arizona. He wanted to do a new opening for the TV show. So he started way out there and he's coming towards me. I got this big camera and videotaping him because he did live TV shows there and I was taping the shows and sending them back to Massachusetts. So he's way out there and then he comes charging in with the horse and I'm videotaping him. So that's a still I took of him. That was 94. So this is Jimmy Spellman, and he's originally from Holton, Maine, and he's in the Maine Hall of Fame, and he was Rusty's lead guitarist. They never practiced. They had 50 TV shows. They'd meet at the studio. Rusty says, this is what we're doing, and they did it. They were real pros. You know, they never had to practice. One time the stage opened up, and Jimmy's, the lead guitarist, stool went over, and he's holding his guitar up. And this is all on film, and he gets right up and he starts playing again. Yeah. So this was a 1 hour special we did with Dick Curlis. And I have it on DVD here. And so the TV show was awarded the best TV show on the cable network. And the Arts and Entertainment and Bravo were the judges. So that was a pretty good thing to have that award from Bravo and Arts and Entertainment. And then it was entered in a national contest, and he won some national award for it, too. Those are just some. I have so many, the awards are all over the place at the house, so. So this was when he got the award for the DVD of the year, and this was the TV show award. That's what they look like. And he never talked about him. You know, he wasn't one to talk about himself. He'd teach you anything you wanted to know. He'd you know, he'd talk if you asked him, but he never bragged about himself. He bragged about everybody else. My niece Belinda, she did this and she did that. So those are his halls of fame he's in. So we got a phone call from called the University of Hard Knocks. It's part of the Alderson Broadus College in West Virginia. And Doc and Chicky Williams were very, very big entertainers in that area, and also in Canada, actually. So they nominated Rusty to get an honorary degree. So these degrees were given to people who made something of their life without actually going to college. So actually, the head of McDonald's was one of the first ones to get an honorary degree from Alderson Broadus College. So it was pretty cool. Of course, he went down and entertained them. There's Gloria Knipe and Rusty when they were older. That was taken, if I'm not mistaken, at the Waldo Theater. I brought his TV show live to the Waldo Theater for 3 years. So that was Gloria. She loved Rusty. Oh my God, that was her Ducky, she said, Ducky. We don't know why he got the nickname Ducky. And nobody seems to know, so, but that's what she called him. And that's Rusty and his mom. She was a sweet thing. Rusty and his sister, Shirley. There's Belinda. Many years ago. She was at Chapel Hill then, weren't you? Yeah. Studying for her doctorate back then, yeah. And there's our little genius. That's Belinda's oldest son. When he was a baby, we took a picture of him inside Rusty's guitar case, and we made a big poster of it for him. And now he's an accomplished musician and composer in LA, so he's quite accomplished. Uncle Rusty was very proud of him, yeah. So this was given to Rusty as an award in memory of a special man who blessed the world of country music. So he was dying then, so I mean, yeah. His end of life was a few years long. It was pretty rough for those of us who had to see him like that, but.
Have a song to end with?
You have a song to end with.
This was a song that Rusty wrote for Patty, and I thought it would be a nice way to end.
This is a song I wrote for my wife Patty, who I love very much. For you, honey.
Thank you.